Yeah, let's have a look now at actually doing an update and why we actually use the customer's ID not once but 2 times inside this update right here. And you can see up here I'm actually in the URL directly, I'm actually putting the customer's ID right here. That's one place. And the second place I'm putting the customer's ID is actually in the object that I'm sending over because I want to update this guy, right? So why is that valuable and why do we need it at least as a minimum in the URL? Let's start out by just discussing why we need it in the URL. And that's pretty much just because REST is actually a standard. It's something where I expect the different types here, the get, post, put, delete, they have a specific way of writing the URL. And when you do a put, I expect, when using a REST API, I expect that you will put in the ID in the end of a put request. And let me try and show you where this is coming from, because of course I didn't just come up with the RESTful web service. I actually use this standard that stands for, the REST stands for, let me just zoom a bit here, REST actually stands for representational state transfer. So that's REST for you. And it's a web standard based architecture that uses the HTTP protocol for data communication. So this is a standard. And when I scroll down here, you'll actually see lower in this set of information that it expects you have a get request, a put request, a delete request, and a post request. And then of course you can use options and stuff like that, but we're not going to cover that in this series at least. So if we scroll further down, you'll start seeing that they have some expected way that each request works. So I expect if you have a get request, you have one without anything in the end, and then you'll get a list back. If you put an ID in the end, you'll get a single user back. If you put a put request, I expect you actually put inside the URL. Notice it's directly inside the URL. I expect you to use the ID, right? Let me show you just another example, and this is Microsoft's example that we used to actually build our first REST API. So let me just try and zoom in here. There we go. And notice the same idea here, the get and the get with an ID, the post, the put. And again, this is the way that I expect the RESTful API to work. And that's why I really encourage you to not remove the ID up here inside the put request, because you would kind of make it, you would move away from the standard. So a developer using your REST API, he would think or expect there should be an ID right here, and he wouldn't get to your request. So that's why you need it up here. Why do you need it down here? Well, actually you don't, but we can use it for something. We can use it for validation. So we're going to keep it down here. We could actually remove it, and inside our request in the code, we could just grab this ID and just put it inside the customer object. But instead, I'm going to use this ID to validate and say, if this one is the same as this one, then everything is fine. Everything is perfect. But if you're sending in 3 down here, and you're sending in 1 up here, something is wrong. You're doing something wrong, because do you want to update customer with the ID of 1 or the customer with the ID of 3? And the same with the other way around. If you put in 3 up here and you 1 down here, which one is the right one? So we're going to use this for validation, and if you're putting in the wrong values, we're going to send back a status code saying something like invalid operation or something like that. So this is what we're going to build in the next lesson. But I want you guys to understand that's why we have the ID not once but twice inside this request right here. We have it both inside the URL up here, and we have it inside the actual object that we're passing over to the backend. So see you in the next lesson where we'll try to actually write this in code. Have fun.